Hello, everybody. I was just writing something very short yesterday, and again, wanted to just explain something I thought was quite interesting. I read this maybe a year or two ago in a book by Marcus Vincent. I can't remember the name of the book, but this has come up a few times in the work of some very well-heeled scholars who know their stuff, who are secular, and that is that the New Testament, as we know it today, actually has its origins in Marcion's Gospel, and that the first mentions of a New Testament come via, we can assume, Marcion, but also his opponents and his detractors. So I'm just going to read you this very quickly. It's not going to take long. I thought it was quite interesting, though, as it's about the 4th or 5th century that we begin to see the New Testament in the canonical form actually take that name. Before then, in the 2nd century, at around 180 to 200, the word New Testament is actually used for Marcion's Gospel, and of course testament being a thing of one thing. So I'll just go through this quickly. I thought I might just establish this, and it shows you again the primacy here in the 2nd century of other texts rather than the canonical ones. And we've already expressed the likelihood there that Marcion's Gospel might have been a pivotal piece of literature within the formulation of the New Testament canon, and that maybe it very well, maybe actually it presents itself as primitive Luke, as the first Gospel from which Luke stems. Here we are. There is growing scholarly recognition that the term New Testament, Novum Testamentum, may have originated not as a label for the canonical collection of Christian scriptures, but rather as a polemical term used by Marcion of Sinope and his opponents to describe Marcion's edited corpus of Christian writings. Now, it's not an edited corpus. I believe it's the first one. I think ChatGTP is helping me with this, and that it is not edited. It's the first one. So, thank you. Yes, this essay assembles the new patristic evidence and modern scholarly views to make the case that the label New Testament first applied to Marcion's Gospel, Apostolikon collection, and that its later use for the proto-canonical canon reflects the Church's response to Marcion's innovation. Use for the proto-canonical canon. So patristic evidence, Tertullian, writing circa 200 CE, Tertullian and Adversus Marcionum, against Marcion, repeatedly uses Marcion for introducing a New Testament, quote unquote, into in opposition to the Creator's Scripture. So this is all from Adversus Marcionum. This is from 4.1. Marcion discovering a New Testament in opposition to the Old. Again, 4.6. Marcion's Gospel, the Gospel of the New Testament of Marcion. 5.1. Marcion, who introduced his own New Testament in opposition to the Creator's law and prophets. So it might be that we're seeing tentative stirrings here, like rustlings in this man's writings, that the first time we hear New Testament is actually Marcion's New Testament, and it's new because it's not like the Old Testament and prophetic scriptures, the books of the kings and so on. Here Tertullian uses Novum Testamentum, not for the later Catholic collection, but for Marcion's Gospel and Apostolikon, the edited Gospel, and Pauline's epistles that constituted Marcion's scriptures. I should have made this a little better, actually, just making sure that people know that it is now looking likely that Marcion's Gospel was first. Pseudo Tertullian against all heresies 6. So this is pseudo Tertullian. This is not. This is pseudonymous, but it's an ancient document. And again, it says similar things. He who first dared to mutilate the gospel, according to Luke, who likewise dared to cut down the epistles of Paul, which alone he receives to a small number, and who is the only one who makes a New Testament of his own. The phrase underscores that Marcion crafted a distinct set of scriptures, which his opponents labelled his New Testament. Okay, early times, early doors, guys, 200 or so CE. The emphasis that Marcion receives Paul's letters alone highlights his prioritization of Paul and makes hint that his collection began with the apostles' letters, with the gospel added subsequently to support them. So, and again, here's the blinder of information. The Pauline corpus and Galatians and so on are specifically, and I think Tertullian says, or Irenaeus says that he discovered Galatians himself, Marcion, that he brings the New Testament letters, Paul's letters to Rome. Quite interesting that. So this guy might have been the founder of an early type of Christianity which brought one of the most important pieces of the canon into the world. That is the epistolary works. Epiphanius of Salamis, 375 CE now, a little later, in Panarium 42:9, he rejected the law and the prophets and called his gospel and apostle a New Testament. So we get him saying this now. Marcion specifically looking like he's saying, this is my New Testament. And the New Testament we know comes subsequently to this. And it begins to be even called the New Testament subsequent to this. Adamantius dialogue fragments. The fragmentary Adamantius's anti-Marcionite dialogues also refers to Marcion's scriptures as a New Testament, reflecting the standard terminology of the polemic. Now we find so many interesting things. If we take these heresiologists at their word, they tell us awful lots about early Christianity, and of course we don't have these Gnostics anymore. They're gone. Their works were destroyed by Christians and failed to be preserved again by Christians, and they were wiped out. It's a very sad thing. Scholarly commentary. Marcus Vincent observes, the first collection to be called New Testament was Marcion's, not the later Catholic set of writings. It was only as a response to Marcion that what we know as the New Testament was eventually assembled and given the same title, Marcion, and the dating of the Synoptic Gospels. Jason Badoon similarly notes, he wrote the book, The First New Testament. Well, I think so. The First New Testament. Tertullian regularly speaks of Marcion's New Testament, Novum Testamentum, to characterize the opposition he saw between Marcion's collection of Christian scriptures and the Old Testament of the Jews, the First New Testament. Yes. Judith Liu concludes, in Marcion's eyes, his gospel and apostle were not only distinct from but replaced the Old Testament covenant. It was thus his text that first bore the name New Testament in any meaningful sense. This is from Marcion and the making of a heretic. Argument. The consistent use of Novum Testamentum or Kaine Diatheke is the earliest patristic account of Marcion's collection, suggests that the concept of a distinct Christian New Testament began as a description of Marcion's scripture, contrasting with the Old Testament and of the created God, Marcion's own theology of a radical break between the gospel of the loving Father and the law of the Creator naturally lend itself to this terminology. The Fathers, in opposing Marcion, adopted his framework while refuting his theology, or attempting to. It is striking that these uses predate any attested reference to a Catholic collection called the New Testament. The term was first applied polemically to Marcion's canon and only later came to describe the broader body of Christian writings adopted by the Great Church. In effect, the Fathers' effort to combat Marcion by contrasting their scriptures to his help, the term New Testament his helped fix the term New Testament from the emergent canon. For the emergent canon, my Lord. Thus, the title New Testament, as we know it today, owes its origin in large part to Marcion's scriptural project and the controversy it sparked. The very concept of a two-part Christian Bible, the Old and New Testament, reflects this foundational conflict. Conclusion. The evidence from Tertullian, Pseudo-Tertullian, Epiphanius and Adamantius, alongside the insights of modern scholars like Vincent, Bedun and Liu, supports the arguments that the term New Testament originated in reference to Marcion's collection. Far from being a term born within the Great Church, it was forged in the fires of the struggles between Marcion's vision of Christianity, a vision that in the end left its indelible mark on Christian scripture itself. I'll leave that there for you to ponder on. Goodbye.